Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert. I co-host the Kanye West podcast, Watching the Throne. Also make videos on our YouTube channel here that discuss more recent and breaking Kanye West news, and also write about Kanye on Forbes. And I do other things. I promise I do so many other things, but there's a lot of Kanye. Today I wanted to make a video talking about water and just giving you an idea of what's going on thematically in the song and maybe explaining some of the tension points that people might have with the song. It's not going to be as in-depth as our podcast lyrical analyses are, which that would be an undertaking, but you're going to come away with it. So when you listen to it, you'll be like, yeah, I get what's going on. That all makes sense to me. And one of the other reasons I wanted to talk about it was just to mention real fast this Pitchfork article by Sheldon Pierce. Kanye's Sunday service Coachella performance was a sacrilegious mess. And it's maybe fitting that we're going to be talking about water because I view the glass full of water as a good metaphor for how people talk about Kanye and write about Kanye. You have the glass that's half full or empty, right? That's a common notion, maybe a cliche notion that we all hear, that if you're a positive person, you'll describe the glass as half full. If you're a negative person, you'll describe it as glass half empty. A lot of music journalists that are writing about Kanye these days are either half full or half empty. They either see the good in everything that Kanye does or they see the ugliness in everything that Kanye does. And then you have people that I think are in the middle, right? I try to be, but I'm definitely more glass half full than half empty. But I feel like I can at least admit the general criticisms people would have or understand where people are coming from with their criticisms, but not this. Like, this is just rubbish to me. And I'll explain why. Just looking at the first paragraph, and then we'll move on to water. Just indulge me for 1 second. Nothing elevates a song quite like a gospel choir. When so many heavenly voices lock into place, the harmonies, power, and precision all surging forward in a rush, the effect can be transcendent. And the thing that I want to point out that Sheldon does here that bothers me so much is that he takes the tone of a confident, objective speaker, that these are the facts that I'm laying out to you, and this is just how it was. This is what happened. This is how it happened, and that's the unfortunate truth. But this is Sheldon's subjective viewing of what happened, and it's going to be one thing when we reach his conclusion if he said, I don't think it ever reached this point, or there are people that had a positive takeaway from the concert, but there are others that had a negative takeaway, and these are the reasons. Instead, he just frames everything negatively. Glass half empty. Okay. Kanye West knows this better than anyone. From Jesus Walks to Ultralight Beam, he has used choirs to emancipate himself from sin as he's wandered back and forth between godlike self-deification and being, as he once put it, the guy who believes in God but still likes pussy. More often than not, the strategy has worked, but as his Sunday service performance at Coachella yesterday morning, which featured West atop a hillside, surrounded by famous collaborators, a small band, and a large group of tunicked singers, no such potency was ever reached. No such potency was ever reached? No supernal energy tapped into. Sometimes the choir seemed as perplexed as the audience often was. So in the opening summary paragraph, all Sheldon says is that there was never a energy reached, a potency was never reached, and no supernal energy ever tapped into that equaled to or rivaled what happened on Jesus Walks or Ultralight Beam. And then saying that the choir seemed perplexed and that the audience was as well. That's it. That's all he has to say about it in that opening, which then characterizes it as if it was this disaster. It was this low energy thing. Everybody was at a loss for what's going on. Never mind the fact that there were many outlets like the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, some dude on Forbes, writing about how great the performance was and the response to the performance in concert and how tremendous of an experience it was. Never mind all the fans, and there were 50,000 people there. Never mind how many of them were saying that it was one of the greatest shows they've ever been to, that they were crying, that the energy was magnificent, that there were people in the choir and other performers there talking about what a wonderful experience it was. people on the live stream saying that it made them cry and they'd never seen anything like that. The objective truth is that, yeah, there were people that didn't like what happened, but there were a lot of people that did. So for Sheldon to characterize it like this is just disingenuous. Okay, moving on. What Sheldon said about water. Those who were willing to endure the 2-hour show until the end were rewarded with a new song called Water. It was like 3/4 through. It wasn't the last thing. Sheldon. Performed with Ye collaborator Ant Clemens, the would-be hymnal featured absurd lines like, take the chlorine out of conversation, I don't like these perfect discussions, but we're made up of 90% water. The song, like the entire event, like a baptism, was an appeal to be purified, except it wasn't. It was more of a celebration, and water is more of a declaration of what is, not a request to be purified, Sheldon. See, and that's the thing to me, like, I'll get to it in a second. But even if his smallest bids for rebirth and perfection, Kanye still couldn't get it quite right. Only 60% of the adult human body is made up of water. But there's something else that's over 90% water, a tomato. This is the thing. Sheldon is supposed to be a music journalist that understands music, that pays attention to music, that would hopefully look at the context of the song and try to piece together, oh, Kanye said 90. The scientific answer is 60%. Is Kanye just being a dum-dum? Or is there something else going on in the song? Am I a music journalist that should take time to figure out what's going on? Or am I just going to write bullshit because I think Kanye's an idiot? The answer was obviously number 2. But this is the thing. You look at what Kanye is saying throughout the entire song, right? And how he clarifies or describes, but we're made up of 90% water. You may be thinking throughout the song that he's talking about H2O, right? The molecular elemental water that we have that's this right here, right? But by the end of the song, in the penultimate line, he says, but we'll get through it because of your love. Either way, we crash like water. Your love's water. And the your, at this point of the song, is God. And he's saying that God's love is water. And this being the penultimate line as it is, has a lot of weight to it. And this is something that Kanye does in the narrative structure of a lot of his songs, is that he'll start the song with a one-dimensional context, and as he develops a song, it starts growing in context and subtext, so that by the end, you get one line that may change everything that's going on. An example of this is Power, right? You start Power off with like all this energy, like the power clap. You have Kanye talking about like SNL and the whole cast can kick his ass, and his childlike creativity, purity, and honesty is honestly being prodded by these grown thoughts. Reality is catching up with me, taking my inner child. I'm fighting for it, custody, and these responsibilities that they entrusted me. Yeah, all these things. I think I started to mess it up there at the end, so moving on. But at the end of the song, he's then talking about jumping out the window, letting everything go. And you go from this height of seeming power, and no one man should have all this power, to no one man should have all this power. He wants to jump out the fucking window and let everything go because it's getting to him. It's stressful. And that's when we descend into the dark, beautiful, twisted fantasy, is after that point. Very similar to here, and where you might think that we are water in a very literal sense, but Kanye is never that literal. There's always something more artistic and symbolic going on in his songs. And that's what comes with this last line, second to last line, your love's water. That means that when he's talking about we are water, he's saying we are God's love. We are made up of God's love. And that's why he talks that we're not as perfect as Christ, because Christ would be 100% God, where we're just 90% of God's love, meaning that we are divine in 90% of our being, but there's 10% of us that isn't. There's that 10% that still causes problems and issues and everything else. And that's something that Kanye had talked about, or kind of started to talk about on Ye, in a different way, but explored in a similar way, in that the idea of the most beautiful thoughts are always beside the darkest, right? Right there up front on I Thought About Killing You. It's this idea that you can't just have beautiful thoughts. Beautiful thoughts are beside the dark thoughts. Beautiful thoughts come from the dark thoughts. And that's why Ye has a 3-1-3 structure, in that the first 3 tracks are dark thoughts. There's ugliness there. There's ego. There's this like me, and this ego, like the ego's so immense. And Kanye had described Ye as an album as him killing his ego. And then you have the pivot point, track 4, Wouldn't Leave, where Kanye kind of comes to and realizes that the ego has brought him to a place where he could lose everything that he cares about. But it's in that moment where he tells Kim, like, you can leave me, I get it. And she said she wouldn't leave, that there's this confirmation of the beauty of their relationship. And then in the wake of that song, you have No Mistakes, Ghost Town, and Violent Crimes. Each song having these beautiful thoughts to them. And the music shifts as well, right? Like the lack of music, that darker soundscape that was there, and I Thought About Killing You, the chaos and kind of insanity that's part of the bipolar mania that is Yikes, followed then by the ego of All Mine. That contrasts heavily with what we're getting on No Mistakes, Ghost Town, and Violent Crimes, both lyrically and sonically, right? And Kids See Ghosts has a similar 3-1-3 structure, where the first 3 songs start in the darkness, kind of surrounded by ghosts. You get ego on Feel the Love, you get ego on Fire, you get this ego and dark thoughts on Fourth Dimension, all those songs, and then Free comes through. And they're free from the things that have been stressing them out. The concern about what other people think and say and do that causes them to worry so much and to have the negative thoughts that they have. And that's followed then by Reborn, Kids See Ghosts, and Cuddy Montage, which aren't just like, I'm pure now, everything's wonderful, like, I'm happy. They're more that these dark thoughts and things still happen. There's still going to be storms, but I know that I just have to keep moving forward. I know that these ghosts can't hurt me. I know that I'm still going to get into a dark place, but the Lord's going to shine his light on me and save me. There's positivity that enters that wasn't there in the previous 3 tracks, or the opening 3 tracks. So Kanye never sees anything as one-dimensionally, as just, we're pure, right? There's always this duality going on. Yeah, we're 90% of what makes God divine. We're 90% of his love and his power, but we're 10% of something else. And Kanye had talked in April in his tweets that if you act out of love, then you'll be a drop of water with the ocean as your army. But if you move out of fear, then you're on your own. Then it's just you and the money and the countless people you have to lie to and manipulate to build a man-made path that will never lead to true happiness. So that's kind of what I believe that the last 10% is on this song. You have 90% that's love, and that's what's empowering, but then you have that 10% that's fear, and that's what causes a lot of issues and problems. So there's that. And then looking at some of the other things in the song, you have Purest Water, like a newborn daughter, which is kind of getting at the divinity and innocence of a newborn child, and kind of brings you back to Violent Crimes a little bit. And then Let Your Light Reflect on Me also makes you think of Cuddy Montage, right? Let Lord shine your light on me, but here it's reflect on me. And then you get Take the Chlorine Out of Conversation, which is something that Sheldon was critiquing. To me, I really like this line because we know that in 2018, Kanye was kind of pushing back against the idea of medication and unnatural things, and also viewing the political correctness that has entered into a lot of conversation, and also the danger that artists are in of being canceled, and this idea of cancel culture as being kind of unnatural things, that people aren't able to express themselves, they're not able to be natural. Kanye said that he felt dampened when he was on the meds, and he also feels dampened when people tell him what he can't do, when they try to control him. Chlorine is used as a sanitizing chemical in water, right? You go to a public pool, and what's it smell like? Chlorine, because they're trying to keep the water clean. And Kanye doesn't want that, because that's not God's water, right? Like, God's love is pure, and that water is pure. So when we're made up of that water, it still means that I'm still trying to piece this together and how to phrase this specifically. And I keep getting lost. I've done this video 6 times because when I start trying to talk about this aspect of it, still haven't nailed down how to quite describe it. But it's something to the idea that the beautiful thoughts and the dark thoughts operate together, right? And that's okay. When you try to add chlorine into everything, that's when you make things one-dimensional. If there's no longer the darkness, that means there's no longer the beauty that comes out of the darkness. And that's something that philosophy has also talked about, that you need these contrasting things. Like, you can't understand joy if you've never felt sadness. You can't understand feeling good if you've never felt pain or sick, right? You can't cherish what you have until you've understood loss. Like, you need each of these sides of the coin in order to just have a better appreciation for and understanding for the human condition and the positive things in your life. If you don't have the contrasting element, then you're kind of at a loss. And that's, take the chlorine out of conversation. Chlorine sanitizes everything in that way. And Kanye doesn't want that, right? He wants to have those flaws put forward, as he explained to T.I., that even if you get things wrong, even if people say ugly things, it's a way to learn. You learn about others. You get corrected when you say something wrong. And if everybody's coming from this place of love, if everybody's trying to be better and understand one another, then there's no fear of actually saying or doing the wrong thing, because people will forgive and you will learn and you'll improve and everything will be all right. So this song, in a way, is kind of utopian in some aspects, in that way, that it's just like, things can be great because we are water. If we were just to take the chlorine out of conversation, if we were to understand that there are going to be storms, which also the storm may come, makes us think of reborn, right? Like, you're going to be in the storm again, but you have to keep moving forward. Here, the storm may come, but we're going to get through it because there's God's love. And because of that, we're water. Like, we'll crash like water, but everything's going to be okay. So for that reason, that's why the 90%, 60%, the 60% is stupid. Of course, we're 60% water, but this isn't supposed to be rational in that way. This is supposed to be symbolic and metaphoric. I talked about it on Twitter, and I said, it's essentially like someone saying the Marvel movies are bad because there's no evidence of superpowered humans existing. So to portray that in a movie is a lie to the public. The creator should be ashamed. It's essentially what Sheldon's saying. Anyway, that does it for water. If you have any other questions about it, want to know more about it, anything you want me to clarify, go ahead and leave a comment. If you have a request for another, I think the next video I'll probably do is on the use of circles and why we had the circle cam that we did during the live feed, and discussing that a little bit. But if you have any other requests, let me know, and I'll get to that this week. I think that does it. We also have our new episode that just came out, which Fade, fittingly enough, after we just heard the remixed version at Sunday service. But Travis and I reveal a lot about Fade, especially how it's using samples and how it has this downward trajectory sample and an upward trajectory sample that kind of get at the fading of one set of behaviors and the rising of a superior set of behaviors, which in that way pays off on the album cover, which is which one, right? The big booty model or the family, faith, all of the things that marriage kind of implies. And here you have in Fade, like, all of that being kind of, I don't know, tied up, and one of those kind of going away and dying. I don't know, just listen to the episode. It's a good episode. And then if you want to support the channel, the easiest way is just to like, subscribe, comment. All of those things tell YouTube that this is worthwhile and that people are enjoying it. And then we get shown off to more people. We get a little bit more revenue. So that's really nice. Yeah, until next time, stay wavy, keep it loopy, and we shall talk soon.